let me announce all the decisions of this board as final. If there's anyone aggrieved by the decision of the board, they may appeal to circuit court within 15 days of the board's decision. Also, no permits or license can be issued until that 15-day appeal period has expired and no appeal has been filed. For information regarding this board's decision or an appeal to circuit court, the Office of Land Use Administration will be your contact. As you come to the podium, if you'll address the board and give us your name and address as part of the record. I would ask that you have any electronic devices, you turn them off or silent so we don't have a disturbance during the meeting. And we usually have a limit of 5 minutes for each of the statements, and you'll get a little warning tone when it's time to cut it off. You've got about a minute to go. And we'll be considerate. Unless we've got a particular variance request that seems to be dragging on, then we'll have to be a little bit more restrictive. All right, let me call the attendance. Mr. Davis? Here. Mr. Coleman? Here. Mr. Metcalf? Here. Mr. Burrows? Absent. Mr. Milling? Absent. Mr. Golden? Here. And I'm William Guess. It takes 5 to have a quorum. We have 5 here. It takes all 5 to affirm a motion for it to pass. So if for any reason one should object, then the motion will fail. So just want to be clear on that. And we will go in order, and we'll start with application 6125. This is 2100 Airport Boulevard. Yes. If you'll come to the podium and
my name is Annalie Nowling, and our address is 2100 Airport Boulevard.
Okay, and your request for an extension has been recommended for approval with the understanding that we don't want to keep that process going.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any questions of the board for the applicant?
No, sir.
Any questions of the board, once again, for the applicant? All right, and part of the formality of this meeting, is anyone in the audience either in favor or opposition of the extension? Okay, we have none. All right, Chair, entertain a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, no one's opposed. All right, have a good day. All right, next application is 4725 Moffett Road. This is 6167, 6060, 5557, 5415. If you'll come down to the podium, sir.
Jimmy Rogers from Corey and Williams Engineering, 3207 International Drive, Mobile. We agree with staff recommendations. The request for the variance is to install a digital signboard on the existing sign at the Mobile Water and Sewer office.
Okay, any questions of the board for the applicant's rep?
Oh. Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Question for staff. Is the residential between 300 feet, is that from the sign or from the property itself?
That is from the sign. If you look at the map behind you, the only residential property that is within 300 feet is the Ma's Water Treatment Plant on the northwest corner.
Okay, thank you.
So none of the actual occupied residents are within that distance?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Any questions once again of the board for the applicant's rep? Okay. Is anyone in the audience in favor of this application that wishes to speak? Anyone in opposition today? Okay, we have none. As you stated, the staff has recommended for approval subject to conditions which you, as the applicant's rep, is in agreement.
We
are in agreement, I should say. Okay. Chair, entertain a motion.
So move, Mr. Chair. Subject to staff recommendation.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Second, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Application 5045, 6168, Garden Design Solutions. This is on 3709, 3713 Cedars Avenue.
Yes.
And your name and address, sir?
My name is Will Maston. I'm a landscape architect representing the owner of the residence at 3709 The Cedars. Dr. Chris and Holly Walton are the owners, and we are the landscape architect representing them.
Okay, well, let me interrupt. The application is recommended for denial, so you want to tell us why we should consider otherwise?
The main reasons that they were looking for were safety and privacy. This, as it was mentioned in the docket, that this is basically their backyard because of the way their house is sited. But the staff did recommend that a 6-foot open air structure or open air fence may be permissible, and that's something that we would be willing to do. I guess that's a steel picket fence, something of that nature. That was kind of an option that was given to us if I saw that the staff did not. They recommended denying it, but we are negotiable. But as far as the hardships, it's just the lack of privacy that's offered by the allowable 3-foot fence at the property line.
Okay. And how does this fit in the future land use again? Bert?
Well, this area is supposed to be mixed density residential, and so it's not really adding to or taking away from that, in that the property is essentially going to remain unbuilt with the exception of the play equipment that the family has there in the fence. So it would not necessarily be out of character with the neighborhood in the land use aspect.
And I'd like to also point out that I did submit several photographs of the of fences around the neighborhood that are within that 25-foot setback. That was part of our submission to the city. That's why we felt that it was not out of character with what's going on in the neighborhood.
Okay.
There's several 6-foot height fences and taller that are right adjacent to the property line in the area, not on their block, but in the surrounding neighborhood.
How long have they lived at this residence?
I believe they've been there for about 6 years, and then they purchased the property that in question is the vacant lot next to them. They bought that to serve as a side yard. As you can see on the aerial photo, it's just a wide open property, and their house is directly to the east of it.
Okay.
They
Any questions? Proceed, I'm sorry.
I'm just saying that the clients just feel that a 3-foot fence on that street doesn't allow for much privacy, and they have small children. That was the impetus for this. And to set it back behind this setback would be 25 feet into their property, which is a substantial part of the side yard.
All right. I'm just looking at the pictures real quick. One of them shows a wall, a brick wall.
That's at a cemetery. That's at the just a block
I see
away.
a cemetery. Yeah. All right. Any questions of the board for the applicant? Representative. Anyone in the audience that's in favor of this application wish to speak at this time? Anyone in opposition? Okay, we have none. So security and privacy are the two primary concerns of the applicant. I mean, the key factor we have to consider is a hardship, and the owners purchased the property knowing that it didn't have a fence for that purpose. So that's something that we'll have to take in consideration. I'll leave it up to my counterparts on the board to come up with a motion.
Mr. Chair, move for approval is subject to existing standards that require.
We don't have anything prepared, but they would have to get permits to construct a fence, so the obtainment of necessary building permits.
subject to obtaining adequate building permits required for building.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
at this point, could I ask staff a question real quick?
please.
Bert, is the main objection the height should be 4 and this is for 6?
Well, the main objection is twofold in that the fences that were submitted as part of the application were in a different context in that they were for the rear portion of properties that faced a different street. So in this case, I think the fence here for this house, which fronts on the Tut Hill, they have a wooden fence back here. Another one that was submitted is the brick wall, which is on the side here of Calderwood.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that brick wall was probably in place in 1984, if not earlier, back when Calderwood was built. So the examples are not quite the same as this site in particular, in that this is for an interior lot where the houses would be fronting onto the Cedars. So the fence would be coming right up to the front property line, and none of these other houses have a fence 6 feet high at the property line along the Cedars.
Do we know what the distance is approximately between the property line and the sidewalk?
Well, there is no sidewalk in this area.
Oh,
I believe it's 12 or 13 feet from the property line to the curb.
the
There's no
curb.
sidewalk on that side of the street.
Now, the other issue that was mentioned is that this property here remains vacant. So when it does get built, it's owned by a different person. They will need a driveway out to the Cedars, and a fence could cause a little bit of a line of sight issue, and that could be a concern only because the Cedars leads down to the school, Mary B. Austin, and then off Tut Hill down to St. Paul's, and then up to St. Ignatius. So there could be the opportunity for pedestrian traffic for kids, but again, there are no sidewalks.
right. If I may, Mr. Chair, would the applicant consider moving the fence back some if it stayed at the 6 and the construction design, but actually pulling it back for those reasons?
I don't think they would like to move it back to 25 feet. See the dotted line
I didn't
on
say
there?
25 feet, I said,
Well,
would they
yes.
consider moving it back?
Yes, they would. They're negotiable. This is option A, what they would like, and we're, like I said, if it needed to be an open air design that staff recommended, and we could do something like that, or we could move it back a little bit further for sightline concerns. I think that is an option.
Yeah, I don't see really what the big difference would be between a different style fence than that fence, if it were still the same height. But I do certainly I'm concerned about the potential sightline and driveway. I don't know what would be a reasonable pullback, maybe 10 feet or so, Bert?
I think that would be far enough back so that if there was a driveway on the west side of the next door or on the east side of the next door property, that would give them sufficient sight lines to see oncoming
And that would
traffic.
also potentially help it a little more blend in with the neighborhood, because there certainly are fences, 6-foot fences all through the area. But I think it's a little close too. Could I amend?
In my motion.
Could I amend your motion?
Yes.
Mr. Coleman will amend his motion first
Yes,
to the setback
Yes.
of what, 10 feet?
10 feet, yes.
Okay.
And
And condition compliance with all other federal or
Yes.
state, city.
Right, if that's your motion, then I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. So get with staff to work out the details.
Okay, great. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate your
Appreciate it.
consideration.
Okay, we're on application 6169. Shipshape Urban Farms, is that correct?
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Henry.
Okay, your name and address, sir?
My name is Dale Spegens. I am the founder of Shipshape Urban Farms, and we are discussing 610 St. Michael Street. We're an agri-tech company that wants to put our startup in Mobile. We want to put our first location in downtown Mobile. And with that, we build hydroponic farms out of shipping containers. We cannot change our material because that fundamentally changes our business, and this is the hardship that we apply for. To assist with that and to be able to basically make our neighbors happy and make the city happy, we're willing to take several steps, including, if you see here, we have a local muralist and artist do some concept work for us. Thank you. And these drawings represent what we're willing to put on the exterior of our containers. If you don't mind starting the video for us. If you'll turn around, you can see a digital walkthrough that I created of the site to kind of help y'all understand what this space might look like. Now, the shipping container that you see to the far right will have the first mural on it, and the shipping container to the left will have the second mural. Both ends, wherever there is frontage on the street, we're willing to put murals. We're also going to use heavy vegetation to try to obscure the view as much as possible from this. We're also trying to be good neighbors by creating permeable ground design. Sorry, it's a little choppy. It's normally not like that. Gabion baskets is seating and a lawn that will allow us to host events like garden parties and yoga on the farm, or help us extend Art Walk to this side of downtown, which a lot of the other business owners that I've spoke with in the area want to have happen. So most importantly, we want to be good neighbors, and we know that we don't fit in material-wise, but this is what our company does. We build shipping containers out of hydroponic farms. So this is the hardship, what we need this variance for. When you look at the big picture of what we're doing and what our systems are designed to do, we're able to turn this half-acre lot into the equivalent of a 30-acre farm. We've had conversations with several of our local restaurants. This will allow them to expand their menu options. That'll allow them to become more creative and more interesting food culture in our town, which is a big factor of what our downtown is going through right now. This, food culture that we're hitting with James Beard Award being given to Southern National. So we ask that you go ahead and allow us this variance on our material because of the fact that you can set precedents by looking back to your opinion that you gave for the innovation portal, where they utilized metal on the exterior of their new building that they're putting in downtown. You can also take into account the fact that there are several shipping containers that have been installed post the adoption of the DDD in the downtown district as another factor. But most importantly, I think you can take into account that Mobile is home of the shipping container. And it would be a pretty amazing thing, I think, to have this come out of the city as well. A new way to think about farming, a new way to conduct farming. I will pass the mic over to Mr. Mike Rogers, who will get up and, he's our builder for our site. He'll get up and speak a little bit on our behalf for right now too.
Well, before you do, any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Sir, could you just back up a little bit for our own benefit? You obviously do this so you understand it. Could you please give us a little bit more information on exactly what you do and how you do it, not just we're going to raise vegetables in a container? Tell us a little bit about...
We're a hydroponic company. I'm a landscape architect and urban designer. I haven't had the opportunity to meet very many of y'all, but I formerly worked for the Mayor's Innovation Team and was on that staff for several years. Our company is the knowledge base of my wife. She's a horticulturalist with a background in hydroponics. We studied at Auburn. And we took the technology that we started developing there, where we're exploring with different means of production, and have created a hyper dense system that allows us to create the equivalent of about a 3-acre farm in each individual shipping container, a little over a 3-acre farm. Right now our system is in the beta phase where we're testing it, and we're about to bring that first system online in Irvington at our test facility. And that's what we're doing. We're trying to create a food system in Mobile where we're able to produce stuff that typically isn't able to be grown in this area or region.
And these containers, are they new containers?
They are new containers, yes, sir.
Okay, and they'll be painted all,
They will be painted white is what we're thinking right now, but we're willing to negotiate if that's not appropriate. The reason why we chose white is because of the heat issue and reflecting of the heat. The inside of them, it's a very advanced piece of technology. The interior of them, which I'm assuming several of y'all are builders, have R35 rating insulation. So it's like a giant cooler, the way the system is designed to work. Inside that, we recycle water. We capture the air, water from the atmosphere and put it back into the system. We use about the equivalent of a shower's worth of water, about 40 gallons each day across our entire system. So we produce less runoff, we use less energy and produce less waste than traditional farming is the intent of the company.
will there be any refrigeration in there at all?
The systems are constantly kept in the low 60s because of the fact that we're growing predominantly lettuces and other stuff along those lines. So it has to be significantly cooler. It's going to allow us to grow stuff that we can't grow in Mobile at all.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions? All right, you said the gentleman's got some information for us as well?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Your name and address, sir.
Hey, it's Mike Rogers, 451 St. Louis Street, and I'm here to speak on behalf of the Shipshape Urban Farms. We moved into St. Louis Street and developed the Buick building. We purchased that property about 4 years ago, and the idea of the Buick building, what really began to kind of move it forward was the 2009 master plan for Mobile, which identified St. Louis Street as a technology corridor. And so we really, from the time that we purchased the building, we really pushed that. We looked at moving a lot of tech companies there. Some of that did not work out, but eventually led us to renovate the building, move a technology company in. The latest, I think the city has just leased a portion for some of their technology, so that, you know, and then with the innovation portal also moving there. The point is that I like to make is that the goal is to attract technology companies to Mobile, and I think that this is super exciting that we have this kind of homegrown technology business that is maybe changing the way that we see farming, and along with our restaurant scene that we have created in downtown Mobile. I think that this is really an opportunity to show that Mobile is open to technology companies coming here. The form-based code is a great code, but it's not a perfect code, and I think there's always going to be challenges to you know, certain types of situations. These buildings are really almost like a piece of equipment, you know, and so I think that there are going to be other technology companies that come in the future that, you know, their buildings may be a little bit odd and may be hard to kind of fit into our form-based code, and I just think this is one of those opportunities that it's important for Mobile to make a statement that will work towards finding solutions for these types of circumstances that come up. I would also say that there are many places across the country and companies that specify in taking these shipping containers and making them into many different uses, everything from restaurants to, you know, I think Verizon's got one that they take around, and a lot of big companies are using these containerized technologies to even build apartments and different things. So there's a lot of precedent for using the containers for different things, and I would ask that you consider allowing this use here for what is now a blighted lot.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
Question, Mike. I know you're involved in it, but set that aside. You're a major stakeholder in downtown, in that area, and you've been involved with and done as much or more than anybody. From a non-contractor perspective, but from a landowner and someone who's as familiar as you are, how do you feel about the aesthetics and not about the technology? I'm talking about for that use there and the aesthetics of it, because it is something different. I think one of the biggest problems that the city is having, because it doesn't fit into what has been done before. The code certainly does not address it. And that's not their fault.
Sure.
It just is. But I would appreciate your perspective on it. Again, non-involvement and
Sure.
non-contractor, but just your perspective on the look and the feel of it and the setting of it.
Yeah. Well, one thing I would say is that I have the utmost respect for Dale and his work as a landscape architect and knowing the aesthetic that they're trying to create. And I see it from that component as a real plus, you know, that, I mean, if it were somebody that really didn't have that aesthetic and weren't trying to do the things to make it blend in, then that would be a totally different situation. And I think there's some opportunity to really review that in detail and make sure that it is something. But to me, it's almost like it's a park, you know, it's a public space. It's a, you know, it serves as many different things. It's something that, you know, is going to be a learning experience for people, you know, that for the kids in the neighborhood, you know, to see things growing actually. I think in addition to the growing inside the container, they'll be growing things outside the container. So, you know, and I'm a bit of a, you know, I love history and I love restoration and old buildings, but I also love ultra cool, ultra modern stuff, you know, and I love seeing them, you know, next to each other. And so I think that, you know, there's an opportunity to make it cool and funky and you know, that not everybody agrees with that, but I think that that's the kind of atmosphere that you create to create entrepreneurship and try to get people, you know, we're trying to attract people to the city, and it's that different kind of mix that often is the driver. You know, people want to go where people are on the move and doing things and new technology, and so, but you know, as far as the aesthetic, I mean, I think it'll be awesome. I mean, you think about, you know, sometimes it's letting the perfect get in the way of the good. You know, it's right now we have basically an eyesore on the street, you know, and we're going to basically put something that looks like a park, you know, and sure, there are containers there, but I think that can be done in a very attractive way, like it's been done around the country, and be a real asset for the city.
From a construction standpoint, would and you'd have to comply with the building codes, I guess, because it'd be considered a portable building. So you would be pouring slabs and then anchoring those, and then running, I guess, underground utilities up.
Right, and I'm not sure that Dale mentioned this, but that you know, ultimately, long term, as the neighborhood develops and you know, all our surface parking lots and all those kind of things start to go away, and the property becomes more valuable, that, you know, and they're selling ship-shape farms worldwide, and he's got his 20-story corporate, or well, I guess form-based code won't allow 20 stories, but you know, ultimately this could be their corporate headquarters, you know, and they would just move the containers to another spot and you know, build a building. So that's another beauty of the having the containers.
Okay, one more question for staff. How about the fencing and then the new requirements for the fencing? Is that applicable here?
Well, essentially the way the variance is intended is to be a deviation from all of the requirements of the Downtown Development Code. The fencing applies to parking lots.
Right.
It doesn't apply to this scenario, although there is a statement of providing street screens. However, I don't believe that applies to the warehouse district where this is located.
Okay, how will parking be handled on the site, or is it on-street parking? What are we doing
There is no
here?
requirement for parking outside of the most intense district, which is T6, which is Royal Street corridor. So they don't have to provide any on-street parking. They do have a small area, perhaps here, where they could bring a vehicle in. The note says that it's a loading zone as well as a food truck area. So, you know, they're not required to provide any parking for the use.
Okay, so it's the applicant's intent to have to park on street for their operations?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Could I add to that, sir?
please.
Sir, we only
Come to the podium, sir.
I'm sorry. Sir, we'll only have a handful of employees at the site at any given time. Our projected is 2 per container, and then 1 person that comes in and out that's more of a site manager. So we most likely will only have about 4 people working this facility at any given time.
And that's a normal business hours?
That's normal business hours. There will be some variation, which would be along the lines of Art Walk, or when the antique store has their estate sale weekend, we'll obviously be there longer during that time frame, because there's so much foot traffic in the area. We really want to form our business around our neighbors.
Okay.
So if it's an event that's going on that requires us to be there later, we'll be there later.
How about the lighting on the site?
The lighting on the site, each one of the fence posts, the intent is they would individually have a LED light set on that, and then we are going to be deploying security cameras throughout the facility due to the fact that it is so open the way we set it up. The fencing is only 4 feet high and is extremely permeable because it's wooden fence post with Corten steel wire connecting in between each one.
Okay.
Is the intent.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Before you sit down, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Since this is somewhat of a green initiative, have you considered solar for your
Yes, sir.
rooftops?
Long-term plans, we would like to see solar, and we'd also like to figure out a way to extract all water that's utilized within the systems from the atmosphere. We envision eventually these systems being able to be dropped off anywhere in the world and operate independent of power and water needs of the area. But that is very, very long-term plans, and this site will not particularly have them unless things change in the future, in which case we'll have to come back.
Bert, the murals also would be a part of the variance, right?
I would say the whole package would be part of it.
Because I know we've had approved variances for murals in the last couple of years.
Right, and typically that was depending on which frontage they faced and if they were representing advertising for the location or not, I believe. So since it was mentioned in their submittal that they would provide murals, that would also be under consideration by the board.
Okay, all right. Any other questions of the board for the applicant's rep? All right, let's go with the audience. Anyone in favor of the application? All right, well, top four, pick four. Please. Most of us know who you are, but if you'll tell us your name and address, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Carol Hunter with the Downtown Mobile Alliance, 261 Dolphin Street. We are in general support of the applicant for this project. When we worked with Andres Duani almost 10 years ago now to develop the DDD code for downtown Mobile, this special warehouse district was created to allow and even encourage the cool, innovative development that we thought was in our future. And Shipshape Urban Farms certainly fits that description. In addition, urban farms and community-supported agriculture are highly desired by the kind of people who want to live in dense urban environments. The demand for fresh, locally grown produce is growing not just among the people who are moving downtown, but among the now 50-plus restaurants that are in this 1 square mile of the city of Mobile. Having said that, however, there are a few conditions that we think are important to include in any approval of this project. We're glad that the idea of a metal building sent off all kinds of alarms and red flags with the staff, because I think the last thing any of us wants is metal buildings all over downtown. And I would hope that in the future, if this is approved and any other applicant would like to use this kind of construction, that it would still have to come before this board for another variance, excuse me. However, shipping containers, we believe, should be considered temporary, not permanent structures. And as such, the requirements for such things as building materials and transparency don't really apply. But since they're temporary structures, we would ask that the variance be attached to the business and not the land, that the variance require the containers be removed should Shipshape Urban Farms ever cease to be in business at this location, and that there are no solid walls of containers on any frontage, so that if they're ever rearranged and placed end to end, that there be a walkway between them so that there is not a solid 84-foot wall of containers with no openings in between. And we would also ask finally that should the site ever be rearranged so that the parking lot is actually needed and required, that it is not exempt from the DDD parking lot masking requirements. In short, if Shape Urban Farms is executed as presented in the application and the video that Dale showed us and the renderings on the website, it will be a positive addition to the district. If it falls short of this vision, then the applicant will certainly have to deal with some grumpy neighbors in our office. Thank you.
All right. Any questions? Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is William Peebles. I am the Assistant Project Manager at the Temple Lodge. We are a mixed-use...
Your address, please.
Sir?
Your address as well.
My address is 107 Ryan Avenue,
Okay.
Mobile.
Proceed. No, I'm sorry.
You're fine. We are a mixed-use historic redevelopment of an existing structure at the corner of, or should I say, the northeast corner of St. Francis and Warren. We are the most immediate residential neighbors to Shipshape Urban Farm. They are located hundreds of feet away from the front door of our development. I'm happy to be here to speak on their behalf, because as someone who is constantly working in the neighborhood and who will be a future tenant of the building, I think it adds a tremendous amount of value to the neighborhood from a residential and commercial viewpoint to have Shipshape be allowed to go ahead with their variance. I talk a lot in my business about the need and the uses of mixed-use development. There's a huge timeline of mixed-use development in the neighborhood as it existed up until the mid part of the 20th century. That is exemplified in our use of our building, which is going to house both commercial and residential space. So I find that it's incredibly refreshing to see a concept like Dale's Urban Farm come to the neighborhood. I've heard a lot of talk today about the aesthetics of it, how it will look from the street, and while that is a very valid point to be concerned with, I feel like the greatest strength we have in our urban neighborhoods are their ability to both house a density of people using them and a diversity of uses for those different people. I think that all of the points brought up about the appearance of the shipping containers from the street, should they be allowed to stay if something were to happen to the business, and how they can remedy sight lines are incredibly valid. I find that the use of natural barriers as far as vegetation and the murals go a great deal in hiding whatever people might find objectionable about their appearance from the street. And in short, as someone that will hopefully be moving into that neighborhood within the next month, I find that it not only is something that sounds good on paper, I think it is overall a draw to the neighborhood for people that may be considering moving downtown as a viable option for living. I think that it would add a tremendous amount of value to what I do, to what other people in the development sector are looking to do in the neighborhood. And I feel like it sets a great precedent for the city to be open to these new types of developments that otherwise struggle. So I hope y'all reconsider y'all's notion and granting them their variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, next, please. Name and address.
My name is Greg Reynolds. I own Old Mobile Antiques Gallery, 653 St. Louis Street. I'm also here on behalf of Lafayette Land Company, the Cheese Cottage, Fowler Lighting, and Robert Murren, which are businesses and property owners directly adjacent and potentially affected by the proposed hydroponic operation. We are in support of the plan as presented and will remain so as long as the site plan is not altered. We met with the owner and believe he has excellent credentials and integrity and will do exactly what he says. However, he plans to expand this program nationwide, and we are concerned he could sell this facility or lease to a third party that may put industrial production above aesthetics. We therefore ask, is your approval site-specific, and if so, does the owner have to reapply if he decides to move the containers to other locations on the lot, add more containers, add containers to a second level. He has indicated his future desire to add a second level and pledged to come to us, his neighbors, for approval, but to us having to come before you for new approval would be the preferred requirement. If these changes cause an automatic requirement that he reapply to you before proceeding, then we are good to go. If not, then we, the neighbors of this proposed new facility, request you make these requests a condition of your approval, and if you cannot, then delay this matter until the next session so we may work out a written agreement with the owner to cover these concerns.
Okay. Any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this support is contingent upon those things that you just
Yeah, I mean,
outlined.
like I said, I own Oldsmobile Antiques Gallery, which we just, moved to that location in December. I mean, we've spent about $2 million redoing that building on that property. So, we have a substantial investment, in the neighborhood. We've seen his video. We think Dale's going to do a great job. We believe that everything he's saying he will do. We just want to make sure that, down the road, that if he decides to add a second story or a second layer of containers, that, he would need to come back to you before that, that's not part of this approval today.
Mr. Chairman, can those questions be answered at this point?
I've got a list. I'm going to defer to the staff after we.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I have a question for you, though. Parking is obviously something that will be an issue. Do you see that as a problem for your businesses?
I do not at all. I mean, I talked to Dale on Friday along with some of the other business owners on St. Louis Street, and again, he said that most of the time he'll have 4 employees. There are no parking issues there right now. I mean, when we do our estate sale the first weekend of the month, I mean, over the course of the weekend, we've probably got 1,500 people through, and there's not a parking issue.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, sir. You have something to add?
Yes, sir. Mark Strickland, 314 Thornhill Circle. I'm here to speak in support of ShipShape, but also to speak for fellow colleagues. I'm a longtime culinary professional in the downtown area. The desire and demand for the product which ShipShape is going to provide has been a long-term request, and I'm lost for words on that. Something that the demand of the chefs here and the local patrons, tourists, or local residents that patronize these restaurants down here want to be able to have a sustainable, locally grown product, fresh, things that you can't get year-round here in Mobile, but also things that you can track your food. You know where your food comes from. I think ShipShape was a huge asset. I mean, from the hotel chefs that I'm friends with and work with a long time, to food salesmen, and all the way down to your local chefs, Chef Shockley, Chef Franishek at Noble South, and all the way up to the Walkers at the Bicycle Shop, all the way down. It's unprecedented for something like this to be in our area, much less in Mobile. You're not going to find anything like this in Baldwin County, Mobile County, on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, or anywhere around here. I think there'd be a huge asset to our restaurant business in the downtown area as well.
All right, thank you. Mm-hmm. Any questions?
Just one.
Sir, before you sit down?
Yes, sir.
Oh, you have one question.
What company are you with, sir?
Sorry?
What restaurant are you with?
I am currently on dad leave right now, but I will be working with ShipShape Urban Farms myself. I have been a chef at Cafe 615. I've worked for the Coopers for Cooper Restaurants for years, Loaded Beer Garden. Yeah, I've covered a lot of more. I can keep going on restaurants, but I'll keep it short. So.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Sir, do you have something to add, or are you in opposition? Okay, we'll have to keep yours brief because we're exceeding the number that I normally allow.
Very brief. My name is Jerry Arnold. I live at 558 Conti Street. That's the corner of Warren and Conti, and I've lived there for 20 years, and I'm in great support of this. I think it's going to be interesting and an attraction. I also own the property on the corner of St. Michael and Warren Street, which we hope to be developing. I just wanted to say that because I'm a resident.
Thank you. That's important. All right, anyone in opposition today? Good. Many in favor, so that's good. All right, any questions of the board? Now, we had some staff questions. Restriction on both the height, the site plan, and the use, should the business decide to relocate.
Well, the use of the property for office and the produce production is allowed by right. So that's not the issue for the variance. The issue is the physical site development that's proposed. And the approval of the board or the decision of the board should be based on what has been submitted for your review. So it would be the 9 shipping containers in the layout as proposed with the application. So should you approve this request, if the business is a success and they wish to add additional shipping containers, they would have to come back to the board to increase the physical form of the site, since what you approved was just essentially 1 story of development.
Okay, and the site plan as
And the site
provided.
plan as proposed, right.
Okay. Is there any other questions of the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Have we ever, Carol said her request was that a condition of approval, she would like to see that if the business ceased, that those containers be removed. Do we even have that right to do that? And has it ever been anything like that? Have we ever done that before?
I'm going to defer to counsel on that.
Counsel? Hello?
I heard that giggle, Jerry. Come on. I think if you rule that the hardship is tied to the operation of the business, that he could not operate this business without this type of container, then if that business goes away, then the hardship goes away and the containers would have to be removed. That's my best answer. No, if it's just on a normal circumstances, I don't think we have the right to make them put the property back in its original condition. But if the hardship is tied to that, I think that gives us the right to do that.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have a question for the applicant.
Yes, sir.
First off, do you own the property?
No, we are subleasing it with a right to purchase.
Subleasing it?
Or excuse me, we're leasing it with a right to purchase.
Okay. If a condition were placed upon you, as we just discussed, how would you feel about that?
Well, sir, the technology is extremely valuable, and if we were to move off the site, we would, for one, disassemble the equipment or sell the systems as a whole, because of the fact that that would be how we'd liquidate the business. It's the most valuable aspect of what we're trying to do. While we would not pull up the concrete necessarily, we would remove all of the containers.
Because
they do have
basically
a
you're
resale
looking
value.
at containers as being trade fixtures.
I'm sorry, say that one more time, sir?
You're basically looking at your containers as trade fixtures.
Yes, that would be correct, sir.
Attached to a slab, but trade fixtures.
Not necessarily. We're willing to negotiate for the way in which we attach them
Well,
to the site.
that's an engineering question. You can't negotiate with us on that. Okay. We're not the place to do that.
Okay.
So my question is, your answer is yes, you do consider those to be trade fixtures?
Yes, that's correct, sir.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any further questions of the board for the applicant?
I have a question for
Yes.
staff.
For staff.
As far as this new code that we're contemplating currently, would this be, I guess, analyzed any differently?
You mean in the process that we're currently undergoing and reevaluating the zoning for the entire city? The thinking for the downtown area would be that this would probably have to go through this same process. So whether it's proposed today or whether it's proposed a year from now, you would probably see the application before you based on the fact that it's using shipping containers that would not normally be considered an appropriate material in the downtown district.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other questions or comments? What's the name of the group that does the training down on the causeway? ADT or ADI or something like that? They've got the shipping containers kind of there front.
Right. I believe that's a state facility, however.
Yeah.
So-
My thought and my statement is that it's kind of innovative, I thought when I first seen it. And this is an area of innovation that I understand we're trying to promote, that this kind of seems to fit that.
Well, it
Trying
is
to
a very
think outside
innovative
the-
proposal. So-
Outside the norm. I understand though the reluctance with the material because you do want to have where people can see what's going on in the facilities, and this is definitely not going to be visible other than through what you promote. I even picture some of the schools possibly coming and doing tours and things like that, so that could be something that would be an educational benefit. Anyway, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I believe that the intended use is probably exactly what is wanted and intended for downtown, especially in this particular quarter. And I think that the hardship here is probably twofold, is that the code and the ordinances do not address this particular use. So a hardship would be that there's insufficiency in the code, and then additionally that the way that his business operates, in order for it to operate from a technology standpoint, a variance is required. So that being the case, I would move to approve the application subject to make sure for the record that it is site plan specific, and that if that business were to move off the site, that his trade fixtures, i.e. the containers, would be removed.
Okay, and limited to the single story.
Well, the site plan specific, which is single story.
Just want to be clear for the record.
Right, and to address what Carol said about if parking were required later, that would have to be addressed at that time, so we can't really do that here. So that's my motion.
Okay.
Second.
Does this already require, based on their proposal, the murals?
I would say that this does include the murals.
Any additional landscaping or green space, Mr. Metcalf?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. I have a motion with conditions. Do I have a second?
Yes, you have a second.
I have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Good luck to y'all. All right, we'll give everyone a second to depart, and we'll move on to application 6170. MTC Logistics of Alabama.
What's that? Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is Jay Watkins. I'm an attorney with Maynard, Cooper & Gale here in Mobile. I represent MTC Logistics of Alabama. MTC has currently got an 18-acre site under contract from the Alabama State Port Authority at the intersection of Yean Street and Baker Street, which is pretty much across the street from the entranceway to the container terminal. MTC Logistics intends to develop this site into a 280,000 square foot cold storage and blast freeze facility for the implementation of new import products from Asia and Europe, primarily seafood and juice products and concentrates, and the blast freeze of chicken for export. You'll see from the site plan the site itself, the southern portion of the site is in low-level flood zone and in wetlands areas, and so they've had to configure the site in such a way as to allow the building to be built on the north side of the property and the retention and parking on the south side of the property. Additionally, because of some pending federal legislation, they are contemplating and expect to be required to put a security fence around the entire perimeter of the facility and have a single point of entry with gated access and to secure the facility. The patrol road and security fencing that's required is minimizing the amount of property that's available along Baker Street. Also along Yean Street, which is only a 50-foot wide right-of-way, there is an Alabama Power Company transmission line, which really eliminates the ability for the applicant to plant frontage trees along Yean Street. Early last week, I met with Mr. Toller, the urban forester, and we walked the site and talked about the requirement for frontage trees along both Baker, Lawrence, and Yean. And I think the determination was made that, and the staff recommendation reflects that frontage trees would not be viable in those areas. And so, what the applicant has requested was to allow them to not have to plant the frontage trees, but in exchange plant some interior trees around the parking and detention to mitigate some of the landscape that they're not doing along the frontage roads. The staff recommendation is for 67 heritage trees to be planted in the interior of the site, which is somewhat reflected. I think we had originally reflected 50 or so trees on the interior of the site. Staff recommends 67 heritage trees. We're in agreement with the staff recommendation and appreciate the staff recognizing the hardship we have on Baker and Yean with respect to frontage trees. We would ask that the commission consider, and I'd like to work with the urban forester in determining whether 67 heritage trees is appropriate for the amount of property that we've got available there, or whether a mix of heritage and understory might be more appropriate. I know Mr. Toller spoke when we met about the right tree in the right place being an important aspect of the landscaping ordinance and how he intends to implement that. And so we might ask that the commission consider setting the tree planting requirements at 37 heritage trees and 30 understory trees, with site and location to be worked with the urban forester as to where those trees will be located on the site.
I got a question. How many employees are we talking about?
We'll have, it's a very high-tech operation. They'll have 50 full-time employees at opening, and as they ramp up, they intend to probably have in the neighborhood of 75 to 80 full-time employees.
It looks like you have, we have a lot of parking on this.
Yes, sir. There'll be in excess of 100 reefer trucks coming in and out of that facility daily when it is fully operational. The truck parking that you see in the lower right-hand corner, those will all eventually, if the need demands, allow for plug-ins for those reefer trucks to be stationed there, to be loaded and sent back out for the next outgoing export vessel. And so a lot of that is anticipatory of the increase in import-export activity of this facility.
So all the drainage from this site goes to the storm retention ponds?
Yes, sir.
Not to a sanitary or to a storm drain system?
No, sir.
And from a mitigation standpoint for the wetlands, is they having to do anything because it looks like a portion of this was wetlands, as you stated?
The wetlands delineation runs along, if you look in the upper right corner, that river, that creek right there is a dedicated city drainage. And so the wetlands area actually runs along that, about the exact line of where that laser pointer is going. And so the wetlands area actually is going to be dug out some along that eastern boundary line to allow for the storm detention. And the parking in that area will be at grade, so there'll be no additional change in the grading there, which will not change the floodplain or the wetlands area. They're, I think, talking to the city about some sort of permeable surfacing there. I don't know how far along the process that is.
Okay. I'm just thinking about runoff and contaminants because of it being adjacent to the wetlands being concerned, especially with large trucks. Because I've never known one that after a period of time, it's not losing some kind of fluids. All right, any questions of the board for the applicant's rep? Have you seen staff's reviewed all of staff's recommendation?
Yes, sir.
And they're in agreement with
I'm in agreement with
except for the trees?
With the tree, yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Once again, any questions of the board? All right. Are you folks here for this application or for a subsequent? I would suspect the one to follow, right? Okay, we have no one in the audience either in favor or in opposition. All right. Staff recommends approval subject to everything, and as the applicant's rep stated, what was the total number of trees that we were trying to come to now with consideration?
67, and I believe Mr. Watkins stated that he was requesting 37 overstory and 30 understory to be coordinated with urban forestry.
Okay, so we end up being somewhere around 7 short total.
No, 37 plus 30 is 67, so it would be, 67 was what was required.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
And Mr. Chairman, I have not addressed that with Mr. Toller. That was just my observation and conversations with our landscape architect about what ratio would make sense on that particular piece of property.
Okay. All right. If you'll have a seat for a second. Do you have anything that you wish to provide as expertise?
Yes, sir. I did walk the perimeter of the property, and it's not suitable for overstory trees along the utility corridor with the power lines, or on the other street side, there would be very limited space. So I am in favor of them wanting to go interior with the trees, and I will help them with species recommendations on the interior to make sure it is compatible.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Once again, any questions of the board? Discussion? All right. Staff recommends approval, and then we have the compromise on the trees with coordination with urban forestry. And it appears that he's addressed any other concerns I may have. Chair will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve subject to staff recommendation.
In coordination with the urban.
In coordination with urban forestry, yes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, sir. All right. 6171. Stratford? Your name and address, please, and your
Good afternoon.
Our
Elizabeth
appreciation
Stratford.
for your patience. Thank you.
Not a problem. Elizabeth Stratford, 1528 Lewis Quarters.
Okay, and have you seen staff's recommendation?
I did.
Are you in agreement?
Yes, and we downsized the house.
Okay. Do we have an updated site plan if you've downsized it?
I believe that we did receive an updated site plan after the initial submittal, and what you have in your report reflects the downsized location.
Okay. All right, and this application is the one that we had the pictures, so we had one opposition, correct? Okay.
But, you know, they're showing pictures of existing structures, not the proposed brand-new structure.
Yeah, so all this will be removed in a new structure?
Yeah.
So the site will be
Let me see what that's not the lot where the new structure is going to be.
Right. The current site is vacant, so.
Yeah, this is the lot.
That's,
correct? Or near?
that's not the.
I wonder why we got this picture.
Yeah.
If you'll show us the overhead, please. All right.
Well, it's really, of course, hard to see, but the property highlighted in yellow is vacant. There are, it looks like, 5 other houses, 3 on this side, 2 on this side, and then perhaps a smaller structure here. This has historically been residentially used, perhaps as far back as the mid-1860s. The industrial uses around it have grown up after the establishment of the residential district here. So a lot of these houses are relatively old, and this would be one of the newer ones being brought in recent memory.
Okay. All right. Any questions of the board for the applicant? I want to get back to this picture, though, these pictures. Do you have any oversight for these properties?
Do I have any?
Do you own these?
Well, they're like heir properties. It's heir property.
This would be part of the Lewis family
Yes.
heirs, so.
Well,
But the one that I'm building on, I own that one.
right. And the only reason why I even bring these up is that I do agree that something needs to be done with these properties.
And we will, if I can get I've been paying the taxes on them and all that, but you have to have a lot of different stuff done if it's not in your name.
I understand that. Okay.
But yes, we can
All right.
fix that.
Once again, any questions of the board? Sir, do you have anything to add that we haven't already discussed? Okay, staff recommends approval, subject to the conditions the applicant's in agreement. You've provided a revised site plan from what's, where it's stated. Chair, entertain a motion. Okay, a motion to approve based on staff's recommendations. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, do we have any business, Mr. Anderson?
No, sir.
Then I think we do have one. Did we have an appeal?
We have one pending.
Yes, it was for the surfacing variance for the property on Halls Mill Road, the Dunaway application, the old IMS school. They're appealing the denial of the aggregate surfacing for part of the parking area.
Okay. What about the welding shop? I drove by there this weekend. I noticed that nothing looks different regarding their large sign.
Oh, the one on the North Interstate. I don't think they have done anything, so we will have to issue another notice or a ticket to get that into compliance.
And Mr. Anderson's favorite one, Hub City. Anything going on with that group?
No, sir. I have no knowledge of that.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just curious since we're.
You mean the Gulf Coast Wheels and Hubcap site?
Yes.
They are very slowly making compliance efforts. We have gone to the site twice now, I think. They have made improvements interior in terms of putting in the correct structure. They have removed a portion of the building on the railroad track side and on the side street. They have not installed any of the required landscaping yet, and I'm not sure of the process for that, but that's being managed by a different part of the Build Mobile department.
Mr. Golden, you had a question?
Question about the Temple Lodge over on there.
Just in limbo.
In limbo?
In limbo in the court system. Nothing, no activity.
Going on the 12-month program?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Thank you. Adjourned.